In 2008, Elon Musk was weeks away from bankruptcy. Both of his companies were on the verge of collapse. Friends told him to stop. Investors had lost confidence. Yet, less than 2 decades later, he would become the first person in history worth over $1 trillion. How does someone go from almost losing everything to building a trillion-dollar empire? This is the story of Elon Musk. Long before private rockets, Teslas, and trillion-dollar headlines, Elon Musk was just a quiet kid growing up in Pretoria, South Africa. He wasn't popular. He wasn't athletic. He wasn't the cool kid at school. In fact, he spent most of his childhood alone. While other kids were playing outside, Elon was usually reading. And not just reading a little, reading everything. Science fiction, physics, engineering, fantasy novels, encyclopedias. Some stories suggest he could spend entire days buried inside books. The library became his playground. The pages became his escape. And those books planted a dangerous idea in his mind. The future could be built. Most people accept the world as it is. Young Elon didn't. He constantly imagined how it could be different. And that difference in thinking would eventually make him one of the most influential entrepreneurs alive. But childhood wasn't easy. At school, Elon was regularly bullied. According to various accounts, he was beaten multiple times. On one occasion, a group of boys allegedly pushed him down a staircase and continued attacking him after he fell. The experience left scars. But it also created something else: resilience. Because while other kids learned social status, Elon learned how to survive discomfort. And later in life, when entire companies were on the edge of collapse, that resilience would become one of his greatest weapons. Then something happened that changed everything. At the age of 10, Elon discovered computers. Remember, this was long before smartphones, long before YouTube, long before social media. Computers were still mysterious machines. Most kids used them for games. Elon became obsessed with understanding how they worked. He taught himself programming. No expensive mentor, no online courses, no YouTube tutorials, just books and relentless curiosity. And only a few years later, he built something himself. A simple video game called Blastar. At just 12 years old, he sold the game's code to a computer magazine. The amount of money wasn't important. What mattered was the lesson. For the first time, Elon realized that ideas inside his head could become products, and products could create value. It was a tiny moment, but looking back, it was the first glimpse of the entrepreneur he would become. As Elon entered his late teenage years, he became increasingly convinced of one thing. His future wasn't in South Africa. He dreamed about America. America built rockets. America built technology companies. America created industries. To Elon, it looked like the center of innovation. There was one problem. Getting there wasn't easy. So he took a complicated route. First, he moved to Canada, and life immediately became difficult. There were no private jets, no luxury hotels, no billionaire lifestyle, just uncertainty. He worked odd jobs, manual labor, physical work, whatever paid the bills. At times, money was scarce. At times, the future looked unclear. But every difficult step moved him closer to his real destination. Eventually, he enrolled in university. And this is where a critical pattern emerged. Instead of choosing only business or only engineering, he studied both economics and physics. Most people specialize. Elon combined disciplines. Economics taught him how money moves. Physics taught him how reality works. Years later, this unusual combination would help him solve problems that many executives couldn't even understand. But while he was studying, something massive was happening. A technological revolution was beginning. The internet. And Elon could see it coming before most people did. The opportunity was so obvious to him that he made a decision that would terrify most students. He left academia behind and stepped into entrepreneurship, a decision that would change the course of his life forever. In 1995, the internet was still a mystery. Most people had never used it. Most businesses didn't understand it. And most investors thought it was a niche technology for computer enthusiasts. But Elon saw something different. He believed the internet would eventually transform every industry on Earth, and he wanted to be there before everyone else realized it. So, after arriving at Stanford University, Elon made a decision that shocked almost everyone around him. He dropped out. Not after a year, not after a semester, after only a few days. To most people, it looked reckless. His family thought it was risky. Friends thought it was risky. But Elon believed that the internet boom represented a once-in-a-generation opportunity, and he didn't want to watch it happen from a classroom. He wanted to build it. Together with his brother Kimball, Elon founded a small company called Zip2. The idea was simple. Newspapers were struggling to understand the internet. Businesses wanted to be found online. Zip2 would help bridge that gap. Today, building a website sounds easy. Back then, it was revolutionary. But there was one problem. The company was almost broke. The brothers couldn't afford a comfortable office. They couldn't afford employees. And they definitely couldn't afford luxury. According to many accounts, Elon often slept inside the office. At times, he showered at public facilities. He worked during the day, coded at night, and repeated the process again and again, 7 days a week. No vacations, no balance, no backup plan. While most people were chasing stability, anyone was chasing opportunity. And eventually, the gamble started paying off. More businesses joined. More investors arrived. Revenue increased. The tiny startup slowly became a real company. Then came the moment every entrepreneur dreams about, a buyout. In 1999, computer giant Compaq acquired Zip2. The deal was worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Elon personally walked away with approximately $22 million at only 27 years old. For most people, that would have been the finish line. Think about it. You're 27. You have over $20 million. You never need to work again. You can buy houses, cars, travel the world, retire before your 30th birthday. Most people would celebrate. Elon immediately started planning his next company, and this next company would become much bigger. The late 1990s were wild. The internet was growing faster than anyone imagined, but one major problem remained. Moving money online was difficult. Banks still operated like it was the 20th century. Payments were slow, complicated, and often required paperwork. Elon saw another opportunity. If information could move across the internet, why couldn't money? So he founded a new company called X.com. At the time, the idea sounded ridiculous. An online bank? Most people barely trusted websites. Now they were supposed to trust a website with their savings? Many thought it would fail, but Elon wasn't interested in what most people thought. He was interested in where the world was going. And eventually, X.com merged with another company. That merger would create one of the most important financial technology companies in history, PayPal. The timing was perfect. E-commerce was exploding. Millions of people were buying things online, and PayPal made sending money simple, fast, easy. For the first time, ordinary people could transfer money over the internet with just a few clicks. The company grew rapidly. User numbers exploded. Investors flooded in. But inside the company, problems were building. Leadership disagreements emerged. Executives clashed. Different visions collided. And eventually, something dramatic happened. Elon Musk was removed as CEO. Imagine that. You start a company, you help build it, you believe in it, and then you're pushed aside. Many entrepreneurs would have been devastated. Some would have quit entirely, but Elon stayed invested. And that decision would change everything. Because despite the internal conflicts, PayPal kept growing. Faster, bigger, more valuable. Then, in 2002, one of the biggest opportunities of Elon's life arrived. eBay wanted to buy PayPal. The acquisition was worth approximately $1.5 billion. When the deal closed, Elon Musk received roughly $180 million after taxes. $22 million had already been life-changing. $180 million was a completely different level. He was rich, truly rich, financially free forever. At only 31 years old, most people would spend the rest of their lives protecting that money. Elon was about to risk almost all of it. What would you do with $180 million? Seriously, think about it. A mansion, private jets, luxury vacations, investments, retirement? That's what most people would choose. Elon chose rockets, and electric cars, and energy. 3 industries that had destroyed countless fortunes. 3 industries that experts warned him to avoid. 3 industries that seemed almost impossible to disrupt. To outsiders, it looked insane. To Elon, it looked necessary. He believed humanity faced several enormous challenges. Dependence on fossil fuels, the future of transportation, and long-term survival as a species. Most people saw business opportunities. Elon saw missions, and missions require sacrifice. So he began investing his PayPal fortune. Not a little, almost all of it. He poured money into a rocket company called SpaceX. He invested heavily into a struggling electric vehicle company called Tesla. And he funded an energy company that would later become Solar City. Within a few years, nearly everything he had earned was committed. His fortune wasn't sitting safely in a bank account. It was on the line. And soon, everything would begin falling apart. In 2002, Elon founded SpaceX. At the time, The idea sounded absurd. Space exploration was dominated by governments, NASA, massive defense contractors, national space programs, not startups. Nobody built private rocket companies. At least, nobody successful. But Elon believed space travel was too expensive. He believed rockets should eventually become reusable, just like airplanes. The logic seemed obvious. Imagine throwing away a Boeing 747 after every flight. It would be ridiculously expensive. Yet that's exactly what the space industry was doing with rockets. Elon wanted to change that. The problem? Nobody knew if it could be done. And the early years were brutal. The first rocket launch failed. Money lost. The second launch failed. More money lost. The third launch failed. Even more money lost. By now, investors were nervous. Critics were laughing. The media was skeptical. Industry experts were predicting collapse. SpaceX was running out of money, fast. And Elon wasn't just dealing with problems at SpaceX. Tesla was struggling too. His personal finances were collapsing. The pressure became overwhelming. For the first time in years, everything appeared to be falling apart simultaneously. One more failed launch. Just one. And SpaceX could be finished. Everything came down to a final attempt. The fourth launch. Years of work. Hundreds of millions of dollars. Countless sacrifices. All resting on a single rocket. If it failed, SpaceX might die. If it succeeded, everything could change. And on September 28, 2008, the rocket reached orbit. After years of failures. After years of ridicule. Success. The impossible startup had survived. And that success would soon attract something even more important. Government contracts, investment, credibility. SpaceX was no longer a joke. It was becoming a serious competitor in the aerospace industry. But while SpaceX had narrowly survived, another disaster was unfolding. Tesla was approaching the edge of bankruptcy, and Elon Musk was about to face the darkest period of his entire career. September 2008. Today, people look at Elon Musk and see one of the wealthiest individuals in history. But back then, he was dangerously close to losing everything. Not one company, everything. Tesla was running out of money. SpaceX was running out of money. The global economy was collapsing. And Elon himself was running out of money. To understand how serious this was, you have to remember what was happening around the world. Banks were failing. Stock markets were crashing. Investors were panicking. Companies were laying off workers by the thousands. This wasn't a normal recession. This was the biggest financial crisis since the Great Depression. Money disappeared almost overnight. Investors stopped writing checks. Loans became difficult to obtain. And risky companies suddenly looked even riskier. Unfortunately for Elon, both Tesla and SpaceX were considered extremely risky. Tesla was still losing money. SpaceX was still proving itself. And both companies needed enormous amounts of cash to survive. The situation became so desperate that Elon began pouring his remaining personal money into keeping them alive. Again and again and again. People around him thought he was insane. Why keep funding companies that seemed destined to fail? Why not protect what remained of his fortune? Why not walk away? Because Elon believed that quitting would guarantee failure. And he wasn't willing to accept that. By late 2008, he wasn't living like a billionaire. In some cases, he reportedly borrowed money from friends just to cover personal expenses. Think about that. A man who had once received hundreds of millions of dollars from PayPal was now struggling to keep his companies alive. The money wasn't gone because of luxury. It wasn't gone because of private islands. It wasn't gone because of yachts. It was gone because he had put nearly everything back into his businesses. The gamble that had once looked ambitious now looked reckless. And the worst part, the pressure wasn't only financial. His personal life was also becoming increasingly difficult. Relationships were strained. Stress levels were extreme. Every day brought new problems, new emergencies, new reasons to believe the entire empire might collapse. For most people, this would have been the breaking point. For Elon, it became a test. A test of whether he truly believed in his mission, or whether he only believed when things were easy. Today, Tesla looks unstoppable. Millions of vehicles, gigantic factories, global influence. But in 2008, Tesla was hanging by a thread. The company had one major problem. Building cars is incredibly expensive. Unlike software companies, car companies can't simply write code and distribute it online. They need factories, machines, suppliers, engineers, manufacturing systems. Every mistake costs money, and Tesla was making plenty of mistakes. Production delays, cost overruns, engineering challenges, cash burn. The company was spending money faster than it could earn it. Investors became nervous. Critics became louder. Many experts predicted Tesla wouldn't survive. Traditional car manufacturers weren't worried about Tesla. Most of them didn't even take it seriously. To them, electric vehicles were a niche product, a curiosity, not the future. But Elon disagreed. He believed electric vehicles would eventually replace gasoline cars, not because governments wanted them, because technology would make them better, faster, cheaper, more efficient. The problem was getting from vision to reality, and reality was becoming brutal. At one point, Tesla was reportedly only weeks away from running out of cash. Weeks, not years, not months. Weeks. Imagine leading a company where every passing day brings you closer to bankruptcy. Imagine having thousands of employees depending on you. Imagine knowing that one mistake could destroy years of work. That was the pressure Elon faced. And yet, he continued moving forward. Not because success was guaranteed, but because he believed the alternative was worse. Giving up. As 2008 approached its end, both Tesla and SpaceX were in danger. The timing couldn't have been worse. The global economy was collapsing. Investors were cautious, money was scarce, and both companies desperately needed funding. Elon later described this period as one of the most painful experiences of his life. Everything depended on finding enough capital to survive. Without it, years of work would disappear. Then, at the very last moment, things began to change. SpaceX secured a major NASA contract. The deal was worth billions of dollars over time. More importantly, it provided validation. The government trusted SpaceX. That trust changed how investors viewed the company. Around the same period, Tesla secured critical financing that helped it avoid immediate disaster. It wasn't a complete victory, far from it, but it was survival. And sometimes, survival is enough, because survival gives you another chance, another month, another year, another opportunity to prove everyone wrong. Many people remember Tesla's success. Many people remember SpaceX's success. Few remember how close both companies came to disappearing forever. History often looks inevitable after the fact, but in real time, nothing was inevitable. The difference between success and failure can sometimes be measured in days. Surviving 2008 wasn't the end of the struggle. It was only the beginning. Now Elon faced a new challenge, turning Tesla into a real car company. Not a startup, not a concept, a real manufacturer. And that proved far more difficult than almost anyone expected. Building a prototype is hard. Building millions of products is harder. Tesla needed to solve problems involving batteries, production, supply chains, factory automation, logistics, quality control, and every solution created new problems. At times, Elon spent extraordinary amounts of time inside Tesla facilities, sleeping at factories, walking production lines, reviewing engineering details, trying to remove bottlenecks, trying to increase output, trying to prevent disaster. The media began questioning him constantly. Critics claimed Tesla would fail. Short sellers bet billions against the company. Articles predicted bankruptcy. Experts mocked the business model. But Elon had heard that before. People laughed at online payments. People laughed at private rockets. Now people were laughing at electric vehicles. The pattern felt familiar. And he believed the outcome would be familiar too. But before Tesla could dominate the automotive industry, it needed one thing: a breakthrough product. A car that would prove electric vehicles weren't inferior. A car that would change public perception forever. And that breakthrough was coming: the Model S. A vehicle that would transform Tesla from a struggling startup into one of the most important companies in the world. And once that happened, Elon Musk's wealth would begin growing at a speed almost nobody could have imagined. For years, critics had repeated the same argument. Electric cars were slow. Electric cars were boring. Electric cars were ugly. And most importantly, electric cars would never compete with gasoline vehicles. That belief had dominated the automotive industry for decades. Then, Tesla introduced the Model S, and suddenly, everything changed. The Model S wasn't designed to be good for an electric car. It was designed to be one of the best cars. It accelerated faster than many sports cars. It featured technology that felt years ahead of competitors. Its massive touchscreen made traditional dashboards look outdated. And for the first time, many consumers realized something important. Electric vehicles weren't a compromise. They were an upgrade. The reviews were extraordinary. Industry experts praised the vehicle. Customers loved it. And Tesla finally had something it desperately needed: momentum. After years of fighting for survival, the company was finally moving forward. But Elon wasn't satisfied. He had never wanted Tesla to build luxury cars for a small group of wealthy buyers. His goal was much bigger. He wanted to transform transportation itself. And to do that, Tesla needed to build vehicles for the masses. That meant creating a more affordable car, a car that millions of people could buy, a car called the Model 3. If surviving 2008 was one battle, the Model 3 became another. The demand was enormous. Hundreds of thousands of people placed reservations. Customers lined up before the car even existed. The excitement was unprecedented. And that excitement created a new problem. Tesla now had to actually build the cars at scale. Building thousands of vehicles is difficult. Building hundreds of thousands is a completely different challenge. Factories became bottlenecks. Machines malfunctioned. Production targets were missed. Schedules slipped. The media began attacking again. Investors became nervous again. Analysts predicted failure again. And Elon, once again, found himself in a situation that looked impossible. He called it production hell because that's exactly what it felt like. There were nights when he reportedly slept on factory floors, not because it looked good in interviews, because there wasn't enough time to go home. The company was burning cash. The pressure was immense. Every delay became a headline. Every mistake became news. Every setback became evidence for critics who believed Tesla would eventually fail. But Elon had developed a habit over the years. When things became difficult, he doubled down. Instead of retreating, he pushed harder. Instead of slowing down, he accelerated. Instead of accepting limitations, he attacked them. Eventually, production began improving. More cars rolled off assembly lines. Revenue increased. Confidence returned. And then, something remarkable happened. Tesla started proving its critics wrong again. For years, there was an entire group of investors betting against Tesla. These investors were known as short sellers. They believed Tesla's stock would collapse. They believed bankruptcy was inevitable. And many of them publicly mocked the company. Some called Tesla a fraud. Some called it a bubble. Some claimed it would never become profitable. The battle became personal. Every quarterly report became a war. Every production number became ammunition. Every delivery update became a headline. For years, the outcome remained uncertain. Then, Tesla began producing results. Revenue increased. Deliveries increased. Margins improved. Factories expanded. And the stock price started climbing. Then climbing faster. Then climbing even faster. Investors who had once laughed at Tesla suddenly wanted to own it. Wall Street began changing its opinion. Institutional investors poured in, and Tesla's valuation exploded. What happened next shocked almost everyone. Tesla became more valuable than many traditional automakers combined. Companies that had spent a century building their businesses suddenly found themselves worth less than a company that had nearly died multiple times. The same company experts had once dismissed. The same company many predicted would fail. The same company that almost ran out of cash. Tesla was no longer fighting for survival. Tesla was leading the industry. As Tesla's value increased, something extraordinary happened. Elon Musk's net worth began rising at historic speed. This wasn't because he was collecting massive salaries. In fact, much of his wealth came from ownership. This is one of the most important lessons in the entire story. Employees earn income. Owners build wealth. Elon owned large portions of the companies he helped create, and as those companies became more valuable, his wealth increased alongside them. At first, he became a billionaire. Then, one of the richest people in America. Then, one of the richest people in the world. Then, eventually, the richest. The growth was so extreme that financial publications struggled to keep up. His net worth sometimes moved by billions of dollars in a single day. Think about that. Not millions, billions in a single day. The kid who once slept in an office while building Zip 2 had become the wealthiest person on the planet. For most people, that would have been the end of the story. Mission accomplished. Retire. Enjoy life. Protect the fortune. But Elon had never been motivated solely by money. Money was a tool, and he intended to use it. Because while Tesla was dominating headlines, another company was quietly becoming even more important: SpaceX. And SpaceX was about to change the future of space travel. For decades, rockets followed the same pattern: launch, use once, throw away, repeat. The process was incredibly expensive. Imagine buying a commercial airplane, flying it once, and then dumping it into the ocean. It sounds ridiculous, yet that's essentially how rockets operated. Elon believed there had to be a better way, and after years of engineering work, failures, testing, and persistence, SpaceX achieved something many experts considered impossible: reusable rockets. Instead of destroying the rocket after launch, the rocket returned, landed, and could potentially fly again. The achievement stunned the aerospace industry. What had once been science fiction was now reality. Launch costs dropped dramatically. SpaceX became more competitive. Customers arrived. Government contracts increased. Commercial business expanded. And SpaceX began pulling further ahead of competitors. The company that once struggled to survive was now leading a revolution. And Elon wasn't finished, because SpaceX SpaceX had another project, a project that would eventually connect millions of people around the world, a project called Starlink. By now, Tesla had become one of the most valuable companies in the world. Most entrepreneurs would have focused entirely on protecting that success. Elon did the opposite. While the world watched Tesla, he was quietly building something else, a giant network in space. The idea sounded almost impossible. Launch thousands of satellites into orbit, surround the Earth with them, and use those satellites to provide internet access anywhere on the planet. Mountains, deserts, ships in the ocean, places where traditional internet infrastructure was expensive or impossible. Most people underestimated the project. Many thought it would be too expensive, too complicated, too ambitious. But by now, people had made the mistake of underestimating Elon many times before, and they usually regretted it. The project became known as Starlink. At first, it looked like another risky experiment. Then, customers started arriving. Then more customers. Soon, Starlink wasn't just a side project. It became one of the largest satellite internet networks in history. The same reusable rockets that SpaceX had developed allowed the company to launch satellites cheaper and faster than competitors. One company strengthened another. One success fueled another success. This became a recurring theme throughout Elon's empire. His businesses weren't isolated. They supported each other. Tesla pushed battery technology. SpaceX reduced launch costs. Starlink generated revenue. Artificial intelligence improved automation. Everything connected together. And as that ecosystem expanded, so did Elon's influence. But another opportunity was approaching, one that would become one of the most controversial decisions of his career. In the modern world, information is power. News spreads online, conversations happen online, politics happens online, culture happens online. And one of the most influential platforms in the world was Twitter. Millions of people used it every day. Celebrities, journalists, politicians, business leaders. Entire news cycles could begin with a single post. Elon had been one of the platform's most famous users for years. Then he did something almost nobody expected. He decided to buy it. The acquisition shocked the business world. The price was enormous. The risks were obvious. Critics immediately attacked the decision. Supporters praised it. Debates exploded across the internet. Regardless of where people stood, one thing was certain. The acquisition was one of the boldest moves of his career. After taking control, Elon renamed the platform. His vision extended beyond social media. He wanted something bigger, a platform that could eventually combine communication, payments, content, commerce, and artificial intelligence. Whether that vision succeeds remains to be seen. But it demonstrated something important. Even after becoming the richest person on Earth, Elon was still taking massive risks. The same behavior that defined his 20s continued into his 50s. Most people become more cautious after achieving success. Elon continued placing enormous bets, and even bigger bets were coming. By this point, many people already considered Elon successful enough, yet he kept starting new companies, new projects, new missions. Among them was Neuralink. The goal sounded like science fiction. Develop technology that could connect the human brain directly with computers. To supporters, it represented a potential breakthrough for medicine. To critics, it sounded futuristic and risky. Either way, it captured global attention. Then there was Optimus, Tesla's humanoid robot project, a machine designed to eventually perform physical tasks that humans often find repetitive, dangerous, or undesirable. For decades, robots had mostly existed inside factories. Elon envisioned something different, a general-purpose robot, one that could potentially work in homes, businesses, and industries around the world. Then came artificial intelligence, a field Elon believed would become one of the most transformative technologies in human history. This belief led to the creation of xAI. The company's mission was ambitious: compete in one of the most important technological races on Earth, the race to build advanced artificial intelligence. By now, Elon wasn't just participating in one industry, he was influencing several of the most important industries of the century: transportation, energy, space, communications, artificial intelligence, robotics, neuroscience. And as these industries expanded, so did the value of the companies behind them. For years, financial analysts asked the same question: how high could Elon Musk's net worth go? Hundreds of billions seemed impossible once. Then, it happened. After that, people began asking a different question. Could anyone ever reach $1 trillion? The number sounded absurd. $1,000 billion. A level of wealth so large that most people struggle to visualize it. Yet, as Tesla continued growing, as SpaceX continued expanding, as Starlink gained customers, as new ventures emerged, the possibility became increasingly real. The biggest factor wasn't salary. It wasn't cash. It wasn't even annual income. It was ownership. Ownership of of companies that kept increasing in value. Tesla became one of the most valuable businesses on Earth. SpaceX grew into one of the most valuable private companies ever created. Starlink developed into a massive communications network. Investors began valuing the empire at levels previously considered unimaginable. Then came the moment that changed history. SpaceX reached a valuation so large that it dramatically increased the value of Elon's ownership stake. The milestone pushed his estimated net worth beyond $1 trillion. For the first time in human history, one individual crossed the $1 trillion threshold. The bullied kid from South Africa had become the world's first trillionaire, a milestone that once sounded impossible. At this point, it's tempting to look at the money, the billions, the companies, the headlines, the rankings. But that's not actually the most interesting part of this story. The most interesting part is what happened before the money, before the fame, before the success. Because there were many moments when this story could have ended differently. The bullied child could have given up. The struggling student could have played it safe. The young entrepreneur could have retired after selling Zip 2. The PayPal millionaire could have protected his fortune. The founder of SpaceX could have quit after 3 failed rocket launches. The leader of Tesla could have walked away during the financial crisis. At every stage, there was a logical reason to stop, and yet he continued.